What's going on, good people? Rich here.
It's your girl Ray P back in the building. What's going on, y'all?
Hey man, we back at it for another episode of the Culture Garden podcast. We
Mhm.
appreciate y'all tuning in. Shout out to School.
Shout out to school.
Um, School funny man. He's a funny guy. Shout out to School man. He'll be missing us this episode. But he just released an episode of School's Guilty Pleasures.
Fifth Element,
So
baby.
Fifth Element. So if you want to hear School's voice, he had a special guest, Mario, Culture Garden family.
For sure.
He's also the host of the Tunnel Vision podcast, which is a sports podcast. But check out that episode. It is on the Culture Garden feed. I produced it and I enjoyed the conversation. Like it was a real smooth. You can tell I've known Mario, of course, forever.
Mhm.
That was School's best friend, or is School's best friend, however you want to call it. But you know how it is. They were attached to the hip for a certain period of life. And that chemistry really just came out on the
Good.
speakers when you listen to them. So I'm looking forward to more things that Mario is going to be able to collaborate with them on as far as that goes. I know he's been asking to be on some episodes. Hey, here's the funny thing about Mario, Rachel. I know you never met Mario. I don't know if you've spoken to him outside of Twitter.
No.
He's just Mario's Mario. You'll know what that means whenever you do get the opportunity to talk to him. But most people who ask to be on the Culture Garden, hey, think of me here, think of me there, or if you got something you need me to fill in on, I'd be more than happy to give my
Okay.
thoughts. Or they might have a very specific movie. Mario wants the heavy hitters. Like Mario want to be on all the gems, the prestige episodes. I'm like, bro, come on, man. We can't do all of that. But that's my guy, man. Shout out to him.
Shout out to Mario.
Shout out to you, Rachel. We got y'all.
Period.
We got y'all, man.
Thank
We're in the home stretch.
One more
I just want
episode.
to say, yeah, absolutely. I just want to say how much I enjoy recording We Got Y'all. It's
I love it.
just fun to take a piece of work that's weekly and
Mm.
just discuss our thoughts and the events that happen. It's just a lot of fun. It keeps things fresh, a little bit different than what we do in the Culture Garden. I know it's a lot of nostalgia.
Mhm.
Which we actually have something coming for you guys in January. That's going to be a
Yeah.
little change of pace. But yeah, We Got Y'all is dope, man. If you're not listening to it, it's on its own feed. Check us out in the Linktree, a television review podcast. Rachel runs it. She is incredible, as you guys already know. But we have a lot of fun with it. I know, speaking of people, a lot of people found Culture Garden through We Got Y'all, which is
Crazy.
always funny to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
because Culture Garden started before.
Right.
One day we'll tell a story about how We Got Y'all even came to be. It wasn't even supposed to be its own feed,
Yeah.
but I'm thankful that it is. And Rachel, you're doing your thing as always. Always proud to work with you and
Thank you. I'm excited for
assist. Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of things coming to 2024 that I'm looking forward to. So we're wrapping up this year strong.
it. Mhm.
Next week is our friends and family episode. By the time you hear this, we would have already recorded. So we're going to wrap up the year that way. No better way than to show love to the people that show us love week in and week out.
Yeah.
Before we get into things today, please remember to like, subscribe, share. Like I said, our link tree is in our episode description. We have a YouTube page, everything. So please tell a friend and tell a friend. This is funny. There will be spoilers today. I'm laughing because I'm trying not to be explicit content today because of the film.
Okay.
But it's gonna happen. Like, so let me just say it right now. Explicit content, shit,
Yeah.
it just slips. It slips. It does not. The Lord knows my heart.
Yeah. I understand.
The Lord knows my heart. It's a PG movie. The Preacher's Wife, as you see in the title.
Mhm.
Just a very wholesome film, especially this time of the year.
For sure.
Let me get the first one out the way right now. There's some things that had me fucked up a little bit. But
Okay.
we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
For sure.
So, quick synopsis of the film. An angel comes to earth to help a preacher save his church and his family.
Mhm.
It's a simple way of putting things. As far as stats go, the film was released December 13th, 1996.
Mhm.
Directed by Penny Marshall.
Okay.
She directed A League of Their Own,
Mhm.
the movie, not the show.
Mhm.
Bring back a League of Their Own, y'all, by the way. Any showrunners out there, you can go ahead and bring that back.
Yeah.
Big, the Tom Hanks movie that came out in the 80s, she directed that. And of course, star of Laverne and Shirley, for those who know and watch Nick at Night, or not Nick at Night, excuse me, TV Land or whatever it was back in our day.
It used to
The
be
film, did it used to be Nick at Night?
it might have been on just TV Land or whatever basic channel back in the day.
Are we at that age, Rachel, where we getting stuff like maybe it was, maybe it wasn't?
We are.
Oh, that stuff all seems like yesterday, man.
We are.
The film was written by Robert Nathan, Robert E. Sherwood, and Leonardo Berkovsky. I know I butchered that name. Long story short, Robert E. Sherwood and Leonardo, they wrote the 1947 film, which this film is based on, called The Bishop's Wife.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Nathan gets credit because he wrote the novel by the same name, The Bishop's Wife, that came out in 1928.
Yeah.
So this is something that was in the works for 49 years before this film even released. Had a budget of an estimated $40 million and made $48.1 million worldwide. Okay. $7.6 million opening weekend. The film is currently streaming on Tubi. You know, it's interesting, Rachel, because when I was doing research for this, there were a lot of articles about how Black filmmakers were really depending on this film to cross over.
Mm-hmm.
It was an interesting time in Hollywood where things became a little bit, for lack of a better term, segregated.
Mm-hmm.
When you had your Boys in the Hoods and New Jack City, even Set It Off, which came out the same year, when those films were coming out, there was a very large, I don't want to say this, it was very noticeable that Black films were for Black audiences. White people weren't coming out to see Black. If you didn't have a white star in it, I mean, you could have a Black co-star. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't have a white star in the film, it was considered a Black movie, and a lot of people weren't coming out. And I think it was Bill Duke or someone else who was talking about they were all rooting for this film to cross over. You have Whitney Houston, of course, who is, just from her music alone, crossover star. She's Whitney Houston. What else do we need to say? Denzel Washington. It's 1996, so he's still Denzel. He still has an Oscar at this point, but he's not a living legend, I guess, that we call him now.
Call him by his name.
Yeah, you know, I try to. Denzel. Denzel is going to slip up every now and then.
For sure.
That's what we grew up with. But it was just really interesting just reading the articles, and obviously it didn't make the money back that it wanted to because Hollywood was a copycat place. And they knew if this film does well, then maybe we can get some other Black films in a different type of genre and get people out here to watch it. They used Set It Off specifically because it tested well with audiences. The story was great. They just said, hey, had we gotten the crossover audience, this film would have made over $100 million.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting to read those articles, considering where we are in 2023. I don't know the last time Hollywood maybe has felt that way. I don't know if we're too far removed where white people aren't going to Black movies. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, this year, and I know it still happens, don't get me wrong. I think the power of our dollar has increased a lot. We're going out to support our movies more, which is increasing those box office numbers. But even this year, when I went to go see The Blackening in theaters, there were white people in the movie theater, by themselves. And there were moments where I'm like, I know you don't get this joke. Like, I know you don't get it. It wasn't for you. But the fact that they were there was eye-opening to me. Do you still think, what do you think that changed? Or are we still there to some degree?
I think that we're very much still there. I think there has always been sporadic whites, sporadic sprinkles who make their way into a Black movie, this, that, and the third. But primarily, that is why our movies are still categorized as Black movies. And there's been, especially as of late, a push to just take that Black off of it. Like, no, it's just a movie. It's just a movie starring Black people. But I still think it's very much segregated. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Here's a movie. This literally just came to my head. So a film like Just Mercy, which was 2019 maybe? Definitely pre-COVID. Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx. The story itself, even though Brie Larson was in the film, the story itself is very racially toned.
Yeah.
And there were white people in the theater. I took my mom to go see it, and
Okay.
there were white people in the theater. And I wonder where that intrigue came. You know, I started thinking about Queen and Slim, and I was thinking like, damn, how many white people were in the theater when I went to
Huh.
go see that?
Worst movie
Um,
ever. Um,
so I don't know. It's just reading those articles just made me think about it.
I don't know. I think that you'll always find. I remember when I went to see Selma in
Mm,
the theaters, and at the time I was living in a very white part of Charlotte, and it's a great movie theater out there in Ballantyne, and so the theater itself was not packed, but I specifically remember Selma 100% history, but 100% like a Black movie, despite being um a historic adaptation of real life events, you know. Um there was this older white couple who were sitting behind me, and after the movie was over, they just sat there and said, "I've never felt so bad to be white." Uh, and I
mm.
will never, ever, ever forget that as long as I live. So I looked over my shoulder and I was like, "Eh."
And I wonder how much of that, and we can move on to the other categories, but I wonder how much of that is for that reason itself. The famous get out trope. You know, I
Mhm.
would have voted for Obama a third time if I could have. Just that a story to tell the grandkids that hey, I was on the right side of history for
Yeah.
this moment, or
Mhm.
publicly I was on the right side of history, even
Right.
though when the lights are off, there might be some other shit that I got going on and I'm
Absolutely.
doing. And
Absolutely.
I wonder how much of that is just to say that kind of pat on the back, like I went and supported, I went and saw it. Or you can have some history buffs, I get it, but just
Mhm.
always interesting. And obviously, when the roles are reversed, we've been doing this our whole lives.
Yeah.
We're always having to cater to other audience and films, whether it's TV, movies, everything. So it's not unusual for us. But I
Yeah.
always wonder, you know what? We're going to talk to Brian about this on our friends and family episode and get his thoughts on Black movies
Yeah.
and what makes him go if he does go.
I think that, and I would be interested to hear Brian's perspective as well, but as somebody, I went to Catholic school pre-K through 12. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then a white Catholic school, second grade through 12. So one thing I can't remember who said it, but it's survival to know white culture, to know white movies, white stars, this and the third. It's auxiliary for them to know ours. It's like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this and the third. But we are expected to be versed in their culture, their organizations, their systems, um, where that's not necessarily reciprocated. And that's fine because
No.
I
Yeah.
think we need more. But
No, absolutely. Because there's been some conversation recently. I know Van Lathan, media personality, has been talking about gatekeeping the culture,
yeah,
and things like that, which I agree with. I think there are some things where I've always said I'm not a big fan of the whole cookout premise and
for
people
sure.
invited to the cookout and all that shit. That's a whole other topic for another day. But I do think it's necessary. And to your point, Rachel, there's no better example than look at Friends and look at Living Single. That's
Right.
all you need to know as far as being auxiliary on this side, needing it for survival on our side. So
Yeah. Yeah.
just a brief conversation. I just thought that was when I've said it before. When I go back and I retroactively read these articles about what was going on at the time, it just always makes me go, and wonder how far we come, if at all. I also meant to mention, which I'll start doing in the episodes, the 33rd highest grossing film of 1996.
The
Preacher's
what?
Wife, 33rd highest grossing film of the year.
Okay.
So not bad at all when you consider.
Yeah.
As far as awards go, it was nominated for an Oscar in 1998 for Best Music, Original Music or Comedy Score.
Hmm.
Hans Zimmer, Whitney Houston soundtrack. What else are we gonna say? Her record label was even promoting this film,
For sure.
so they had all the powers that be backing this.
Hmm.
The NAACP Image Awards, Whitney won the winner for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Motion Picture. Um, the Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Motion Picture, Loretta Devine, won that award.
Okay.
Jennifer Lewis was also nominated. It was nominated for Outstanding Motion Picture and Outstanding Youth Actor, which was Justin Pierre Edmond. As far as the cast goes, Denzel Washington as Dudley. I mean, come on,
The angel.
come on. Whitney Houston as Julia Biggs. Courtney B. Vance as Reverend Henry Biggs.
Mhm.
Gregory Hines as Joe Hamilton, the late great Gregory Hines. Jennifer Lewis as Marguerite Coleman. Loretta Devine as Beverly. Justin Pierre Edmond as Jeremiah Biggs. Lionel Richie as Bristol,
Yeah.
or Brislow, excuse me. Terrell Hicks, very one small thing. Terrell Hicks, who we know as Keish from
Mhm.
Belly. We know her from Bronx Tale. She was a teenager, literally was just titled 18. But I had to shout her out because she just, for those two films alone, she's a legend in the culture. Sherry Headley, excuse me, as Arlene Chatton. Most people know her from Coming to America. And then
Mhm.
you have Cissy Houston, legendary gospel singer Cissy Houston,
Yeah.
Whitney Houston's mother as Mrs. Havergal.
Mhm.
So this film came out under Denzel, damn it. Uh, it came out under his production company. Do you know who his first choice was to play Julia?
Angela Bassett.
No,
Who?
one of his good Hollywood friends, Julia Roberts.
Really? Did
Which,
y'all know that?
but
I don't
here's the
know what
thing,
you said.
Rachel.
It sounds vaguely familiar.
But here's the thing, Rachel. What does that look like? Is that still, is everybody else as is? Is this an interracial movie? Like, is this, well, how does that look? I was very curious. Now, let me say for the record, first thoughts, hey, Julia would be perfect for this. Quickly
Mhm.
pivoted to Whitney Houston, to
Mhm.
the point where it took a year for Whitney Houston to agree to do this
Yeah.
film. She didn't see herself as a housewife. She didn't see herself playing this role. Just
Mhm.
couldn't picture it. And Denzel was so persistent with it and said, "No, this role is for you. Was made for you." I know we know Whitney as the iconic and legendary singer that she is. Not too many people with a voice like hers, but I think it's also important to remember she was paid $10 million for this film, which made her the highest black actress in
Yeah.
1996 and the third highest actress or paid actress, excuse me, in Hollywood at that time.
Oh wow.
So she was getting it done in the box office.
Love it.
So to get her to agree, I thought was pretty interesting and really dope. The movie, I mean, she shines throughout it, but I always wondered what the overall makeup of this film was going to be if Julia Roberts was Julia in the film.
I don't want to see that. And I love Julia Roberts.
Love Julia Roberts.
Third behind Meryl and Sandy B. But yeah,
Hmm.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that movie. And to your point, does it now become an interracial love story, this, that, and the third? Or do they do it Cinderella style where everybody is an amalgamation of races and this, that, and the third? I don't
Mm.
like that shit though. Uh,
I could see that. You know what? Because this film is of that vein.
yeah.
When you talk about like the fantasy aspect of it, so I
Mhm.
could see that. I guess it's so puzzling to me, or I'm so intrigued by it because I didn't see anything else about any of the role. Like I
Yeah.
didn't see anybody else who was going to play the pastor or anything. So to have her in this film would have looked a lot different. So I think it was one of those pre-production ideas that it was a thought, and then they quickly pivoted. I got Julie over Sandy B. I'm sorry,
No.
I got her over Sandy B. I do.
I love
Um,
Sandra Bullock.
I love Sandra Bullock too, but I think I got Julia over. Meryl's the GOAT.
Yeah.
Meryl's like, I'm talking about like not even, I mean, listed actor,
Mhm.
man or woman. Meryl's right up there.
Yeah. But that's enough of them.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story for another day. Rachel,
Yes,
this was your week
it was.
to pick the film.
Mhm.
School picked Home Alone. I picked Friday After Next,
Mhm.
and you picked Preacher's Wife or The Preacher's Wife. Excuse me. What
Yeah.
made you go with this?
I think after last week, we just needed to recenter ourselves. I think that we just needed to bring some, I don't want to say wholesomeness, but something else to round out this Christmas season.
Mm-hmm. You always bring the balance, Rachel.
Yeah, so let's balance it out with something else. We did something funny, we did something ridiculous. Now let's I don't even want to call it serious because it's not a serious movie at all, but a different level of lighter. I'll say that. So,
For sure, for sure. Very much. We'll talk about it here in a second. But
mhm.
I was happy with the pick. And when we talk about first experiences, I'll kind of tell you why.
Okay.
I have to ask you, classic or not?
To me, it is a Ray P classic.
Okay.
And that may be a nostalgia, this, and the third. I mean, I get on y'all all the time, you in school, about calling stuff classics.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this for me is one of those, like, I ain't going. It's a classic for me.
I understand and I respect that. I'm going to say no.
Mhm,
I'm speaking from the overall viewpoint. I don't think this film is discussed enough
mhm,
to be considered a classic.
mhm.
I think when I think when people do sit down and watch it, they have their own memories and
Yeah.
recollection of it, and it's enjoyable. I don't know
Mhm.
if you call it a classic.
Y'all niggas on
Um,
my side. That's the
ah,
problem.
I was waiting on that. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I talked about the origin of the film,
Yeah.
as far as it was based off a novel, which was based off another film that came out in 1947. I haven't seen it. That film is also The Bishop's Wife. It's also streaming on Tubi. If anybody wants to take some time and watch a 1947 film, feel free. I'd love to hear the feedback. I don't think I'll get to it.
Yeah, I'm not
My
into
natural, yeah, my natural curious mind wants to watch it, but I just don't know if I have time to really sit there
mhm.
and go through it. But as far as first experiences go, do you remember the first time you saw this?
Yeah, I saw The Preacher's Wife in theaters.
Okay.
Again, I am a church kid,
Mm-hmm.
despite leaving in and making my way back. But this was one of the few movies, not really few, but one of the movies Rhonda was like, "Oh yeah, y'all can go see The Preacher's Wife." And then
Mm-hmm.
I had the soundtrack because, if you know me, if you knew me as a child, I'm a very serious dancer. And for the Christmas program, I think that we were doing something. And so my dad bought me the soundtrack. And so I just played it to death on via CD back in the day.
Back in
So,
the day. Um, I remember seeing it in the theaters.
mhm,
Do I remember the details of it? Not really. It's nine
yeah.
years old when this film came out, but I
Mhm,
definitely remember seeing it in the theaters.
yeah.
Also, being a child who grew up in the church, um, mom playing the gospel Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, cleaning the crib, and all that kind of stuff. This is one that I remember, and probably the aunts were there, just
Mhm.
taking us to see it. It is a family film,
Yeah, it is.
and you look at Denzel and you look at Whitney, it makes perfect sense. The kicker is I haven't seen this film since around that time.
Oh, really? See, I watched
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, and that's I'm gonna start doing that
yeah.
because it's not because I had no interest in watching it. I just never thought about it. It's just one of
Mhm.
those films where it just kind of slid through the cracks.
Yeah.
You don't think about revisiting it, and when I did, I was pleasantly surprised. Um,
Man.
because for one, it's a PG movie.
Mhm. I know you
For
love those.
two, you said what?
I know you love those.
Well, we're gonna get even further. Like this film has everything that I dislike about movies.
Mm.
Child narration.
Ah,
I've discussed how I feel about that. However, it works for this. And the
mhm,
reason it works for this is because it's not trying to be serious. I think the last time that I brought up my disdain for the narration was
mhm.
Soul Food. And I think a part of that was because Soul Food's rated R and it's trying to tell a serious quote unquote story.
Yeah.
Whereas we get pulled right in the before we even see a person on screen, we get pulled into the fantasy element of
Mhm.
this film.
Yeah.
Very holiday-ish. I don't think I mentioned last week that I can pop on Friday After Next in July
Mhm.
and just get weak because it's just ridiculous, as we've already discussed at nauseum. This one is it puts me in a Christmas mood, and not
Yeah.
just because of Christmas, but because of The church aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you love Jesus, as Rachel says, or grew up in church, or just are a spiritual person, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard not to get in that spirit and mood,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
it's very, very, very black church.
For sure. For sure.
Very, very black church, which I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it a lot. Um, I will start watching this every holiday
I love that for you.
for that reason alone, because it's not. And we were talking before we press record. For me, this isn't a film that I look at from scene to scene.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about YouTube, moments, and just I'll pull it up on YouTube. I don't have to watch the movie. I think this is one you have to sit down and watch because of the overall message.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never get too old for it, and for me, it's a great recentering at
Yeah.
the end of the year
Mm-hmm.
to remember what's important, to slow down a little bit, take care of those that you love, pay extra attention to those people, and what's going on around you, and get right and get ready, because we all have trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
We all have things that we're going through. We all have relationships that we're working on.
For sure.
And we all need a Dudley, or we need an angel to kind of come down and say, hey, slow down a little bit.
Church is rich.
You feel me? Like, no, seriously, this really put me in a mood.
I
Where it's bigger than the movie. It's bigger than, yes, you can easily come in and nitpick this and that and talk about, X, Y, and Z, but it's not for that. Like, if you don't feel good
mm-hmm.
by the time this 2 hours and 4 minutes is up,
Yeah.
that says more about you than it does the movie. I'm sorry.
For
It
sure.
just does.
Sure.
It just does. And it's very easy to understand why it is a Ray P classic, why
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of individuals who watch this film and consider it a classic.
Yeah.
Because it just uplifts you. And there's no slapstick comedy, there's no goofy stuff. We talk about, Jingle All the Way, which is one of my favorite Christmas movies, but that's so much extra shit, extra stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it. I love watching this, especially revisiting it.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? 20 something years later.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
And you have a way of doing that, Rachel. You have a way of picking a film that I haven't watched in a while or never seen before.
Yeah.
And it brings back those good memories. So, school, as I said, this is kind of his Friday after next. This was his, like, man, there's so much I can't get into it. But
Yeah.
For me, I felt the opposite. I get it. There's not a ton to say about it, scene by scene and quote by quote. Overall message, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into scenes.
Okay, for sure.
I'm going to let you lead the way.
For sure.
I'm going to add some commentary, and let's just talk through this. Let's talk through this film. I want to know. I want to know what made Ray P fall in love with it.
Okay.
So we'll have that discussion.
It's not necessarily me falling in love with it or what caused it, but just, again, we talk about revisiting this movie. And so the opening, you talked about the magic. We see that happening. But then for the intro song to be Help Is on the Way, and I'm about to cry.
Hey, won't he do it?
Won't he do it? Like, he may not come when you want him, but he'll be right there on time. And y'all know I am churchy. But especially in this season, not just the Christmas season, but just like this season of the world where we are, like, people need to hear that and remember that. And again, churchy. So introing a movie in a Black church scene where we see, and if you grew up especially in that 90s church where the choirs, I sing on the choir / praise team, but it's really like a glorified ensemble. It's not like the choir of yesteryear. It's not, shout out to the Mississippi Mass Choir, who was the choir featured in the movie, the church choir, it's not that. And that alone is just like a serious nostalgic moment. And it was like fresh bread baking in the morning, like that memory, that core memory unlocked of the music really, really being a part of the sermon, whether Julia had already heard it or not.
Right.
So it was just really, really nostalgic for me. And it kicked us off. It put me right where I needed to be, like spiritually, emotionally. You know what, Lord? Like, you're right. You may not come, like help is on the way. You don't have to stay where you are, like change is gonna
Mm-hmm.
come, So I just really, really love that. Um my next yeah.
Real quick. I just want to jump in and piggyback off everything you just said, kind of to the point I made earlier. It just sets the tone.
Hmm.
It's like going to church. It's like putting
Yeah,
you in there. And there are some listeners, I'm sure, who aren't churchgoers or necessarily spiritual or don't have that history of upbringing. But there's, like Rachel just said, sometimes you can just walk into church or walk into a service and just that emotion just comes over you.
yeah,
Maybe you're holding on to some weight,
yeah,
or some things that have been troubling you or been on your mind heavy.
sure.
Just that release. Like, I don't even, you said it perfectly. Kind of, I don't even know why I'm crying. I don't even know why I'm this emotional, but that's just the spirit's kind of like, ease up, like, let it go. We got you.
That's it. That's
So
it.
yeah, I love that. And it introduced us to the title.
Right.
We didn't get preacher's wife,
Hmm.
and the duties that come with that. Knowing her father was the reverend, knowing that he is reciting one of her father's scriptures,
Yeah.
and also seeing, like, I know my husband, this probably wasn't what he had planned this week.
Hmm.
So let me make sure I do my part to help him out a little bit, and her kind of lead
Right.
the choir. I mean, that's just them. They're freestyling and they're making it work. So I
Yeah.
love that scene as well.
And that's a real thing,
Yeah, yeah.
you have to fill in the gaps where you can. And clearly Henry was struggling. So he had to pull Reverend Coleman's sermon out. So it is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Shout out to that. My next thing
Absolutely.
is meeting Dudley in general. We see again, we talk about the magic of this movie. We see him appear out of thin air, essentially into the snow, to Hakeem and to Jeremiah. While the opening, introduces us to the Biggs family in and of itself, but this is where we get into the shit. This is where we get into essentially what this movie is going to be. And even moving beyond that is Dudley at the different pizza and hot dog stands, because I've made my intro and he was dressed like maybe he died in the 70s, or
I was
very
going to ask you.
80s. So it was unclear to me exactly how long he had been away from Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It was clear and interesting to see, this ain't as easy as I thought it was going to be. This ain't even what I thought it was going to be. And so just getting that realization. And again, even though part of the movie, the angels are on this long line, he wasn't familiar with Henry prior to, his assignment. So
Right.
you don't know, other than him being a pastor, you don't know that he's done all these good works. You don't know or understand why he needs your help, or why he's so why he's stretched so thin, And so I like that
Mm-hmm.
he got that. Even though Henry was not a great husband, like he was failing in that area, but he was doing so much. He was spread entirely way too thin, but it didn't mean his heart was in the wrong place for that. And niggas will fight you about their pastor.
Yo,
So that was
straight up.
because they absolutely will get you together. Nigga, give me my pizza bag. You get on out
Give
of
me
here.
my pizza back. Give me my pop.
Here go your
Your
money.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah, your money's no good here because you doubt you this man, the one
yeah,
that's on my wall that baptized all my kids and officiated my marriage and everything. Nah, you got to go up out of here, bad
yeah.
mouthing them. So that's a great point. I appreciate the introduction to Dudley mainly because there's an audience or a crowd. It's a small crowd, but they
Mhm.
exist, that likes to say that Mr. Washington plays Mr. Washington in every single
Mhm.
role.
Mhm.
And I think this will be one of those first films that I point to show a little bit different.
Mhm.
It's kind of silly even having a conversation about range and Denzel because
Yeah.
it's Denzel Washington.
Mhm.
But in a non-traditional role, we like seeing ass-kicking Denzel. We like seeing smooth, suave Denzel.
Uh-huh.
But this is a wholesome, PG rated, and even different than Remember the Titans because I believe that's PG as well. But it's sports. Sports brings everybody together.
Yeah.
This is something where he just shined in his role. I have a question for you.
Hey.
Not to jump too far ahead, but I am curious.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have liked to see Courtney B. Vance and Denzel switch roles?
No.
Okay.
And here's why. Shout out to Courtney B. Vance, but you talked about Denzel being more wholesome. He was still debonair Denzel in this
Oh, he
movie.
was super charming, super timid.
I think that there is a swag that Dudley needs to have in order to make the story of Julia falling for him believable. And as talented as Courtney is, I don't necessarily see him in that light. I see him as the preacher or pastor. You know, he played C.L. Franklin in Aretha Franklin's, I think, in the unauthorized biopic that was on Hulu. Um, I just don't see him like that. Even in roles where I've seen him be sexual and this, that, and the third, it's like, oh, that's Uncle Courtney. Whereas no matter what, Denzel is Denzel. And I hate that people say that he plays the same character, but sometimes it's just in you. Like
It's just in you. I'm just a dog at this.
sometimes it's just in you. But I think,
Ain't
go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I think that one thing with Denzel, is that sometimes the cadence of your speech just is what it is, and the tonal quality of your voice, no matter what you do, is it's just gonna shine through. And I think that more than anything would be the plight, dare I say, of Denzel, and not necessarily the role that he takes or his acting capability. Sometimes that dialect is just that, you know.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's very Michael Jordan in the '90s. It's just
yeah.
sometimes you just win so much and you're so good at what you do that people just start nitpicking certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Because
That's
when you're at the top of your game in that way,
it. Mm-hmm.
you know it's you versus you. Nobody's gonna come and knock you off of that mantle.
Yeah.
You know, after they won their sixth championship, Michael Jordan famously said, "Y'all can't win until we quit." Like it's just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like Denzel is Denzel. Like he's him. You see me trying to mix both of them and trying to say his name right. I'm gonna let it flow however it goes. Um, I find myself calling back to some previous conversations we had
Okay.
based off your answer. So I was wondering when I asked that question, I didn't know if you might lean into Our Family Wedding,
Mm.
and where you mentioned you never really saw Forrest Whitaker
Exactly what I
as
was thinking
that kind
about.
of sex
Yeah.
symbol type of person.
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
didn't know maybe Courtney B. Vance could pull it off in that way to you. Incredible talent. Like when I talk about one of those actors who's I'm just a big fan of, not necessarily the A-list. He's an A-lister to us,
Yeah.
but overall he's not. But man, Courtney B. Vance is so talented.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I also thought about the Best Man conversation, your
Mm,
very first podcast appearance, when I made the argument that it's hard for Lorenz Tate, in my eyes, to play Harper
mhm.
because Lorenz Tate is just too smooth in a sense. Like you need. It's not necessarily believable that he would be shying away from Neil Long's character and everything else. The same way,
No,
um,
you covered the
if
intel.
yeah, the good point. But it's in the same way that if Denzel was the pastor,
Mhm.
if he was Pastor Biggs in this, there's no way that I'm imagining Julia to even be thinking about Dudley in that way because you have him at home. Like for me, and I don't say this a lot about people because you know, let's just say I'm happy being me.
Mhm.
Um, I've grown out of saying like I'm glad I'm not this person.
Yeah.
And I'll just say I'm happy being me. There's not too many people that I look at and I'm like, damn, that's a cool ass dude.
Mhm.
No matter what Denzel does, like that's just him. Like he just brings it, even when he's not trying to. And he's extremely charming, extremely debonair,
Yeah.
even when he's trying to be innocent.
Mhm.
He just has that quality about him. Like some people have it. Um,
It's in them. It ain't on them.
exactly. It's just him. It's just him. So
But
I was just curious about that. That crossed my mind because there were moments, and not to jump on things that bother me, but there's no way I'm telling Dudley to take my wife dancing, knowing
No,
that that's. And of course, I'm not looking at it as Dudley. I'm thinking of it as Denzel
that's
Washington. Like,
Denzel
bro, you
Washington.
crazy?
Right.
You crazy? Like, no.
Any man.
Exactly. For
Anybody.
that reason, yeah, I don't care who you are. I'm not taking my wife dancing, but we'll get to that later on. What else did you have as far as scenes?
My next scene is just maybe this episode is me caping for the church.
I'm with it. I'm here for it, man.
um,
I'm here for it.
my scene is the furnace going out at the church, just
Mm-hmm.
because, again, it's Christmas season or Epiphany season or Advent, whatever you subscribe to. Um, and if you're Black church, y'all had a Christmas program. It's funny because last week we had our Christmas program during service. Bless it.
Right.
God bless
Right.
the children, who parents are still bringing them to the church house and making them be active and participate. So shout out to that. But again, the nostalgia of this is thinking back on how many Christmas plays we did growing up and having to be at church for all of the extra rehearsals. And St. Matt's is old. It's an old church. And so the fact that the furnace has gone out or the water heater is not at all surprising. At the top of the movie, the church is packed out, but
Mm-hmm.
the offering's only $96 and what a button?
A button.
That's not conjecture. Like that is how it be. These churches, for as much flack as the church gets, about pastors driving whatever kind of cars, luxury, this, that, and the third, most pastors, especially if you're not in that mega arena, are living like the Biggses.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a moderately priced car. They live close to the church. The church may or may not own their home, depending on your denomination. Which is what I think what's going on with the Biggses too. So it was just a very realistic scene for me, and having again having been in and out of church for my whole life and seeing where the HVAC goes out or the furnace goes out, where you got to pivot. We might have to be online before being online was a thing, or we're finding makeshift places to gather until this can be rectified, because I've already given up my salary. And we still only got $96 in the button in the offering.
Right. Absolutely.
It was just a
And,
very, very real thing. And I just loved it.
yeah. Not to mention,
Mhm.
like you said, there's something about growing up in the church, and I'm
Yeah.
not talking about coming on Sunday morning
Mhm.
and going to Sunday school, whatever. I'm talking about when your parents are active in the church and you're at church on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, for sure.
That type of thing. So seeing them rehearse and getting everything together when the church isn't full for service just
Mhm.
brought back these memories of New Prospect Baptist Church
Mhm.
down and over the Rhine, and just being there when I wanted to play Nintendo or Sega, and I'm here in the basement of this church just looking for the toys or the puzzles or game room. My mom's up there in her meetings or doing whatever.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just love that part of it. This church conversation is really going to make me excited to have a talk on Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, whenever we do
I
that movie.
I love Honk for Jesus. I wanted to cover
Yeah.
it when it first came out. Oh God, I love that
Yeah.
movie.
I just made me think of it. I'm like, all right, that's like I said, there's people who are going to get this episode and there's people who aren't.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll continue. What do you have next in regards to your scenes?
Um, Dudley meeting Beverly in the office, because again, we saw Loretta Devine at the church, reading for the children, but this is our real introduction to Beverly. And I think maybe she could get that place the same ish kind of role, but again, I think it's just her spirit. I don't think Loretta Devine is typecast, but I liked us meeting her. We see that she's an assistant. She's overworked, this, that, and the third, and just really can't get it together. So as much as Dudley was there to help the Biggses, he ended up being a help literally to everybody who he came in contact with. So I just like that, just because I love Loretta Devine or Beverly. Um,
Yeah, no, and it's perfect. It's a perfect emphasis on the angel on earth.
yeah.
I said, like I said, this movie makes you feel something, and this time of the year, we're covering Sopranos on Good Earners, and there was a Christmas episode. And in the therapy session, Tony Soprano's therapist said, a lot of people call this time of the year stressness. And that's how it is for a lot of people, trying to do everything at once and take care of a million other things. And when you think about those true leaders of the church,
Yeah.
like a Reverend Biggs, and who's actually doing the Lord's work and going from house to house, impacting these people. And like you said, and that's part of what makes this an interesting film, because is he a bad husband in this moment? I don't want to say it for the whole duration of their marriage, but in this moment when we see them, absolutely, you want Dudley to, excuse me, you want the Reverend to do better.
Mm-hmm.
However, he's not just out here being trash. Like, he's doing a ton. Obviously, you need to take care of home first. I'm a firm believer in that. There is a such thing as delegation and not wearing yourself out too thin.
You took the word.
And as the leader of a church, that should be the first thing that you call on. There are deacons and other people who can go make these deliveries. Even though I was cool with the basket delivery because that's something they did together.
Right.
But just making and carving out some time for your wife. When you part of being a leader is having a little bit more ability to make that schedule for yourself.
Yeah,
and carve out some times. And
for sure.
If you know anything about the church, people are very respectful of the pastor and him being the head of the church and the leader. I say respectful, you know what I mean? I mean in person, maybe not behind closed doors. But I just think it could have worked out in that manner. But I just appreciate that Dudley, like you said, was sit there to remind everyone about what life is really about.
The only thing I'll counter with that, because I do agree, but you will find certain parishioners who don't want Deacon Anderson. They don't want associate pastor. I want the bishop. I want our pastor to be here and show up. So I think that is a balancing act that they have to navigate through, because even though I knew that the church obviously had deacons and trustees, I couldn't tell if there was an associate pastor in the pulpit who Henry or Reverend Biggs could have delegated those other tasks to, because some stuff you're not ordained to do, but the shit he was doing, they could have did.
As black as they made this film, or authentic as they made the black church in this film, I feel like if there was an associate pastor, they would have pointed that out specifically. So I don't think there was.
Okay.
I don't think there was one.
Okay.
Looking back on it, because even Saul, I'm trying to think of who else was in that meeting at Lewis Hamilton. What was the name?
Joe Hamilton.
Yeah. Joe Hamilton. I don't think he had one. I don't think
so either. I know that they were deacons, and Joe Hamilton is a trustee, which lots of trustees are not members of churches that they attend. So that was, again, something that was authentic to the church experience. I will jump right in, because that's actually my next scene, is all the deacons and trustees being at Joe Hamilton's office. Just because niggas do not be your niggas.
That's not something you walk into.
That's not something
you should know what's happening before you get there.
Exactly. But everybody has their own vision for the church. And I think that this is one major issue with the church right now, is that people are out of touch, and that you may see the glitz and glam. You see these mega churches with basketball courts and daycare facilities and all these things. But one, how are we paying for this shit? Two, if you move the church outside of the neighborhood, away from the people that it's serving, how is this beneficial? All of that is in vain. And I'm glad Henry realized that sort of at the end, after he did sort of succumb to the peer pressure of Joe Hamilton and of all the deacons, because again, our water heater just went out. It's cold in here. This is an old building. It's in the hood, So if you dangle this shiny object in front of me that you're telling me I can have, of course I want that, despite it being at the expense of the very people whose lives I'm trying to save and impact and touch, and this, that, and the third. So I love that one, because we see it's the second-ish instance where we see Dudley and Henry sort of going back and forth. And Henry not wanting to succumb to Dudley's, dare I say, authority or power. And just again, the reminder that you got to watch everybody. And while they may mean well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's a fact. True words have not been spoken. It also plays into the emotional aspect of things where you do have history
Yeah.
with these churches.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the families of pastors
Mm-hmm.
um, who have been the head of these churches for years. And in this situation, we have Julia's dad being the reverend and trusting. She specifically said, "My dad trusted you
Yeah.
with this church."
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of give that away, it's almost the
Like
the church equivalent of selling grandma's house
for
in a
sure.
sense.
For
Um,
sure.
at some point, yes, we need the boiler.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we need a daycare center, maybe a senior area, but
Yeah.
at what expense? Everything costs.
Mm-hmm. Because if
Um,
these niggas can't get across the street, how they gonna get across town?
exactly, exactly. And even if you do only have $96 in the butt,
Mhm.
your church is packed out. You do have
Right.
people coming up to get that spiritual word.
Yeah.
And the rest, just put your faith in God that He's going to figure it out.
That's it.
But yeah, getting into bed with the Joe Hamiltons of the world
Mm-hmm.
will never turn out. I don't know. It just doesn't make you feel right as a viewer. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make you feel good. Like,
Yeah.
man, I'm not even. This is a fictional church,
Mm-hmm.
and I would be upset if he sold that to Joe Hamilton or if something happened or it got torn down because I felt the impact that it had in that area, even though I've never stepped foot in that movie church or anything.
And shout out to Gregory Hines. He played a good villain, Rest in
Yeah,
peace.
he really did. He really did. He really did.
He really
Um,
did.
and very believable because they're never the movie version bad guys, right? They're
Mhm,
like Gregory Hines. Like they're
mhm.
non-threatening, really. Just
Yeah,
have a lot of power and influence. Like, and
that's
regardless of what you say, this is gonna happen.
that's it.
I'm not gonna big red you. I'm not gonna dang you out of a window if you don't sign these papers, but you better believe that what I say is gonna go. I'm already 3 steps ahead of this.
That part.
Um,
That part. I
and
just
I've
lock those
already
doors. I got the keys. I'm the
yeah,
trust. I own the building. It's nothing y'all can do.
right. I'm breaking news to you. Like
Yeah,
you didn't even know that. That's how far ahead of the game I am.
crazy,
So whether
crazy.
you like it or not. And obviously the people who are disguised as those who have your best interests. I love what you love.
Yeah.
I care about the things you care about, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. Not really. Gotta watch out for. Gotta watch out. What we
Crazy.
got next?
I've got Julia and Henry at Jazzy's. Or no,
Mm-hmm.
Julia and Henry at the restaurant. This is right before Dudley and Julia at Jazzy's. This is where Julia
Dudley
ate
takes Jeremiah across the street.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Just because again, this is the start, and right before they get to the restaurant to sit down for dinner, they're shopping. Julia is looking at a nightie, and this is the first we see them flirt a little bit, but this is the first time Dudley kind of makes it obvious that he's on Julia's head. Like, uh, I would love to see you in that 90 or whatever it was that he said. It was definitely high key inappropriate. Um,
And I think he said something along the lines of, we're looking for a gift for Henry. He
mhm.
would trust me. There's nothing more he loved more than seeing you in this nightgown.
Yeah,
On
yeah,
surface, to some people, that might sound like an innocent remark. I would never say that to one of my niggas' wives,
ever,
just
ever.
because it implies something, and there's a respect level that you have to have.
Even if I see it in the window, if I'm out with my girl's husband for whatever reason, or
Now, I was just about to say that. Like, I don't even know why I would be with my
like
boy's wife by ourselves anyway.
I'm probably not going to even draw it to your attention. I'm going to peep it and make it a mental note and bring my own self back down here, just because, again, those boundaries. But Marguerite had made mention of something being wrong in Julia and Henry's marriage very early on, in our first, not really the intro, but our
Yeah,
real
it
intro
was
to,
right there.
you know. So this scene where Henry is back from the meeting with Joe Hamilton. um Dudley, he was kicked out of the building essentially. So he left and he went to go take care of the business that Henry should have been taking care of, his wife and child. And again, Henry or Dudley takes Jeremiah away, and Julia and Henry are really sort of getting into it, making a scene. Now, people know who y'all are. This is a smallish community, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all arguing at the table, and even the waiter saying, "Will you please give her the keys?" I just loved all of that. One, because shit really do be that deep, and no matter what you see or whatever your perception is of uh their first family, quote unquote, like they are very much real people, and they are real niggas who have arguments in public just like everybody else. And again, her father trusted him with that church. So this is a whole nother level of hurt. This isn't just irritation at you not consulting me. This is irritation and frustration with you tarnishing, uh abandoning my own legacy. Like my
Mm-hmm.
the church got my daddy blood on it. Like
I grew up in this church. I sang in this church way before
yeah.
any of this.
Yeah. So I just really, really like that, because it was a reminder that again, these are real people with real shit going on.
I also want to point out that I love the fact that Julia wasn't going.
Mhm.
There's only so I've been respectful.
Mhm.
I understand you have a lot of duties,
Yeah,
but I'm also your wife, and there's only two. There's only so many laters that you're gonna give me,
for sure.
and now is later. Like, bro, you were supposed to be here an hour ago. Like, I don't care about none of that. Like, you
Yeah.
gonna tell me what happened, and them having to, even though they got into it. And I love your point. Um, I think a lot of people shy away from church because they look at their leaders or their pastors, reverends, bishops, whatever, um, as God, for lack of better
Yeah,
terms,
you
and
really
just
should.
don't give them the grace of being human beings. And when you have, the Kirk Franklin tape come out and just
Mhm.
things like that, is just, yeah, it's shocking because of the position, but that's only because of the position that you put humans in.
Mhm.
These are still human beings. These are still, trust me, some of the illest niggas I know are pastors. You feel me?
For
All
sure.
due respect. All due respect.
Yeah,
So it's a good way to like balance that out. Like, you
for
know what I
sure.
mean? Like, listen, it's, if you see the pastor and the first lady having their moment, like, mind your business, keep it moving,
Keep it pushing.
and all
That's
that
it.
stuff. You know what I mean? You know what I
Thank
mean?
God this
So,
is before cell phones, because they definitely would have been having them phones out.
yeah, for sure. 100%. 100%.
Sure.
Um, what we got next?
My next scene is Dudley and Julia at Jazzy's, the club, because again, this movie has everything I love: God, live music,
Mhm.
Denzel.
Hey, Jazzy's, listen,
I
Jazzy's is
want to
like
go
a
to Jazzy's
spot.
right now.
I would go to Jazzy's right now. You feel me?
Yeah. Um, that scene was so beautiful. Again, Henry was just so lost in the sauce, he couldn't pull it together. Again, I'm not telling this fine ass man to take my wife out. And candidly, again, he didn't know that they were going to Jazzy's, but anywhere, that I've told her to be dressed up. Like, I think you might have to just be disappointed. Or again, we talked earlier about delegating tasks. You don't have to delegate. Deacon Johnson don't need me at the soup kitchen. Not tonight. Like, I want to see you dressed up, pull that hair up, looking the fuck good, not looking like first lady. I want to see you looking like Julia and not
Hmm.
Sister Barnes, Lady Barnes, or Biggs. So there is what's Lionel Richie's character's name? Bosco?
Brislow.
Brislow, whatever. Um, and this is one of the two quotes that I have, or three quotes, and it says, if you ever want to know what loving sounds like, she's got that secret in her voice. And this is still Whitney fucking Houston
Yo,
singing.
yo.
Denzel is acting, but there is a piece of me that when she is up on that stage, that he really is in that moment with her, you know, like, yes, I'm acting, but also what a fucking voice. Like, I would be lost. Truly, truly.
I'm sitting here struggling. I don't know, man. Sometimes they say on the internet from time to time, like, "Oh man, like, can you believe we live at the same time as
Hmm.
Beyonce or
Yeah.
Whitney Houston?" Just to have these talents,
Hmm.
um, that just seem like how is this even possible to
Yeah.
have a voice like that?
Crazy.
Um, it's incredible, and I would get lost in that too. Like acting or not, you're gonna snap me out of that because I'm watching Whitney Houston sing
Hmm.
live,
Hmm.
no words.
What more can you say?
Yeah, no
Uh,
words.
yeah, even before we get to that beautiful, beautiful moment, again, we remember Dudley died young from whatever.
Mhm.
So it's been a long time. We're not sure how long he's been on the other side of things, but he doing the funky chicken, like the mashed potato,
The Popeye.
the Popeye. He is really killing it for 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So excited. And I love that again because I think it's a sillier side of Denzel that we don't see, probably have not really seen since, other than to get your hands off of me.
Nah, seriously, that's
With him and Jamie Foxx, you know. So I just
mhm,
again love that just for the comedic value of it, something that we don't see from Denzel.
absolutely. That's 1980s Denzel.
Yeah.
That's carbon copy.
Hmm.
Um, there's a film that he was in, maybe late 80s, maybe right after Glory.
Hmm.
I can't think of the name of it, but he was like a lawyer and died and came back. It's almost like a down to earth slash preacher's wife situation where came back reincarnated. Just that type of Denzel.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. It was him just us seeing him in a different light
Yeah.
at that time because he at that point, he's established and well known. But like I said, I love this role for him in general.
Hmm.
I just love what he brought to the table. I don't think anybody, I won't say anybody could have done it, but it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Dudley's just somebody. Even Jeremiah, I want Dudley. I want Dudley, bro. I'd have smacked the dog shit out.
What an ego blow. Can you imagine?
But he needed that. Like if that doesn't get you geared up as a father and as a husband, then I don't know what does.
Yeah,
Right? Like if your kid is this close to calling another nigga daddy, and
crazy.
your wife is giving the googly eyes to this man, like I
Come
need
on,
to step up my game.
come on,
You
come
know what I'm
on.
saying? Dudley, you got the night off. I got this. Like there's like you said, there's no way you're going to Jazzy's, even though he didn't know it was Jazzy. You're not taking my wife to Burger King,
Come on.
bro. Like not we
You done been with
not
my
doing
wife all weekend.
it. Every time I look up, and kids always tell. Every time I look up, Jeremiah talking about something. Dudley did it. Dudley taught me how to spell Hakeem's name. Dudley did this. Dudley did that. Like Dudley about to get his ass whooped.
Uh-huh.
That's what's
Uh-huh.
about to happen.
That's it. A
Yeah.
sidebar had even if Mia didn't ask Melissa what was up, Melissa would have started spilling those beans just in that same fashion, you know, Miss Tiffany, Lulu, da 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 da, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Out to rap
Yep.
shit.
Yep.
But
Shout out to Rap Shit. Shout out to We Got Y'all. You're absolutely
yeah.
right.
Um my next scene, and I don't have really too many more because we've pretty much gone through the movie, is Billy's second court date once Reverend Biggs or Henry has this come to moment, and he wows the judge with the evidence. That's just movie magic, feel good. The bailiff breaking not necessarily character, but breaking character with that hallelujah. Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's just a hallelujah moment. You'll get a word even when you're not expecting it, and then again, we've already kind of just touched on so much Dudley and Julia. I mean, they had a whole ice skating um video montage, and My Heart Is Calling, the song that was in the background of that, I loved back in the day. Again, I used to play the Preacher's Wife soundtrack like nobody's business. So I love that. But leading or following that is Marguerite getting Dudley the fuck together.
I love that scene.
She realized what was going on. I was wowed by your charm at first, but nigga, take your charming ass somewhere else.
Go
This is
charm somebody else.
please, because she can't take it. And that's the thing. When you deal with a charming motherfucker, you will lose yourself if you're not careful. Married or not, you will find yourself lost in the sauce. So shout out to her being a praying grandmother.
Ah, shit.
Save my daughter.
That's
Save
real.
my daughter.
That's real. That's real. Yeah, I love that too. Because
Mhm.
it's easy to get caught up in it.
Yeah,
Because we saw her spitting by him. That's a handsome man, the whole nine. So it could easily turn into like, I get it, but it was like,
yeah,
nah, before something goes left, let me
yes.
step in right now. Because I get it. I understand. Like I
Mhm.
understand
I
my
get
daughter would fold.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're gonna fold. And obviously not knowing the angel aspect of it, but just that boundary, like, listen, this is a married woman. Like that's her
Yeah.
husband.
Yeah.
I get what you're trying to do is, it's fine and dandy, it's well intentioned.
Hmm.
As you said earlier, Rachel, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
For sure.
Um, Go ahead. I'm sorry. You
I
have a
mean,
little,
that's really it. I mean, the end, because
yeah, just the movie magic. The
yeah, change of
even
heart
that scene.
villain.
I was gonna say, even real quick, even that scene with Marguerite, just him. I love just the Dudley hand thing.
Hmm.
People touching his hand and just feeling that.
Yeah.
Um, her instantly stopped smoking right
Hmm.
at that moment. But when he pulls up to Joe Hamilton's house,
Hmm.
kind of lets him know this is what it is.
Oh, to
Joe
heaven.
goes to church.
Hmm.
Joe goes to church. He understands what's going on. He understands this is bigger than him. This is bigger than his mall and tennis courts. And tells Henry like we'll get this worked out
Yeah.
next week. Like Merry Christmas to you.
Hmm.
The whole nine. Just Dudley's purpose being completed. His mission being completed as far as
For
what he
sure.
was supposed to do. He came down to help Henry in his time of need. Helped him remember what was important.
Hmm.
Um, Regain his footing as a husband and family man, and as that strong, non-wavering leader of the church, like the
And
person that
community.
the church needs.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because Marguerite had mentioned something about, um, I'll stay here till the year 2000 if I need to.
Crazy.
That was a big thing, the turn of the millennium, like just who's leading us into this turn of the millennium.
Hmm.
If you had to be there in those late 90s to remember that, Y2K and everything.
Yeah.
So that was really important about how we're going to move on or grow with the times.
Hmm.
The fact that Henry was able to gather all of that, even though it was, he's hard headed, he's very stubborn.
Hmm.
It did take some lessons, but he got a good grasp on what was needed to be the best version of himself and also get that in return. Because
Sure.
Julia she's a writer, man. She was a writer. Um, I would love, in a sense, to see this film in 2023. Not necessarily that I want to see it, just curious as how the story works in present times. When there's so many other distractions,
Hmm.
I wonder if a character like Julia, I wonder if there's just a little bit more than,
I
when it comes to the Dudley character. I just wonder if there's a little bit more temptation than what we see here. There's something to think about.
for 2023, absolutely, it has to be. That's the name of the game these days. But that would be something very interesting to see, low key. Now you got my wheels turning. But
And I think you can't. Well, I won't say you can't. I think you can really make this into something. I think you can make Dudley a real person,
hmm. Hmm.
somebody who just stumbles across in your life. Um, well intentioned, doesn't mean any harm. Just kind of that avatar of of somebody who's coming in and making you realize I got to step my game. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just something fascinating that I thought about. I'm not for remaking movies, but this is something that I think you can spin on his head. I mean, obviously, this is a remake of a film that came out in 1947. So,
Yeah.
It's possible to put a twist on it, but it's 1996 is very different than 2023.
For
It just
sure.
makes you think. That's all. Makes you think. So I love all those scenes, like you said. It's
Before
still
we
this.
move on, there was just one that I didn't, and I just thought about it. It was where Dudley was teaching Hakeem how to, or teaching Jeremiah one how to spell Hakeem's name, and then went on the whole, I don't want to call it a diatribe, but went into his own story of dying early and missing his mom. I thought that that was just a very powerful scene because it gives us more, essentially, or just any bit of Dudley's story. And then shout out to Jeremiah for being sensitive to what he was saying,
Yeah,
to be such a
absolutely.
little kid. And I think sometimes we overlook that kids, they really are altruistic. They really can pick up on things more than we give them credit for.
100%. Two things to that point. The first is it wasn't until I started coaching kids, because you're so far removed from the youth in a sense, like on a day-to-day basis, that you
Mhm.
forget they are small adults.
Yeah.
Like they have their personality. Like when there's kids who I coached when they were in fifth grade, and I'll
Mhm.
see them now, and they're seniors in high school, and
Mhm.
they're still the same person.
Yeah.
They're just adults to a degree. They're just older, but the heart of them is still them.
Yeah.
Um, I remember myself in fourth and fifth grade,
Mhm.
cussing and doing all types of stuff that
Yeah.
yeah, just bad, and you just don't like. Where'd you get that from? You like, oh snap! Like these are little. They are aware. They pick up on everything.
For sure.
And second, that was one of my favorite parts of the movie, the scene
Mhm.
you just mentioned, because I am a strong believer. I believe I've said it on this podcast, and I've said it just in my own personal life, of keeping those who passed their name alive. Like
Yeah.
you represent them. You
Mhm.
take the good, the best parts of them are in you. So anytime I get a chance to speak of someone's name or anything of that nature, it
Yeah.
just keeps that memory alive because they live through us, and I'm a very strong believer in that. And him teaching that to somebody like Jeremiah, and Jeremiah, to your point, picking up on it,
Yeah.
um, and just a good, pure-hearted kid. I know it's a movie, but
Yeah.
just a good, pure-hearted kid, man. The way his prayers, how much he cared for Hakeem, all of that, man. It's hard not to like it.
For
Um,
sure.
So yeah, what about quotes? You got any best quotes?
Just I only have 3, and it was just Marguerite. Do I look like I mind? Just cause Jennifer Lewis is Jennifer Lewis.
Hmm.
You ever want to hear what loving sounds like? What loving really sounds like? The secret is in her voice. And then you just better not go window shopping with money in your pocket.
That's that's
That's
that's
my
my number one quote that I have in the whole film. Um, I don't think I've heard that anywhere else but this film.
Mhm.
But it's man, so on point, so on point. And then also shares the policeman. Policeman would see your mom walking down the street and say, "Break it up." I just thought that was funny. Also, don't be talking about my mama like that,
Period.
especially my mama who's passed on.
Yeah.
Um, Talking about how fat she was. Like I get maybe she was in bounds because at that lunch you mentioned about I'm here and he's not.
Yeah, crazy.
So maybe that's what I told myself to kind of be like, all right, she had that. It's always a little get back.
Yeah.
And you just gotta take that. Plus, it shows the banter in the marriage. Like I know you don't mean this. I know this isn't ill spirited. I know it isn't ill will, whatever the case is. Even though she probably does feel like, your mama never liked
Yeah.
me. Like I really, whatever.
Mhm.
Say get mad about it if you want to. But that Jennifer Lewis line was definitely one of my favorites. Things that bother you.
They know they should have tried to get custody of Hakeem.
Yo,
If Bessie Davis or Bessie Adams is 2 days older than dirt, ain't no way y'all was letting this lady have this little 5-year-old boy. Like, all right now, come on. And he's already best friends with Hakeem. He lives essentially next door ish or across the street. Go get that baby. Go get
my
that.
whole point.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing I had on my list. Like, come on,
Yeah.
you can make some room for this kid
That's it.
and figure it out. You're not about to let him. He had to go on a train. Like, I don't know where he was headed, but way too far, bro. This kid like 5, 4. He not
Right.
even in school yet, man. Bring your little ass over here, man. Let's cook you a home cooked meal.
Come on.
Grandma's still across the street. You can still go visit. Like, we got you. Speaking of kids, letting Jeremiah cross that street by himself and then letting him sit on that park bench while they go skate really upset me. Like, it really bothered me. Like, I had an issue with that in this film. Like, watching him run across that street gave me anxiety. Like, bruh, what are y'all doing?
The only thing about this street is that they were right there.
I get it.
That park bench while you out ice skating with somebody that's not your husband is crazy.
Insane. And I know they try to clean it up with the Coco man's gonna come and bring you whatever. I don't care. Jeremiah's not old enough to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
That's something that really bothered me. I wrote down New York, but then I'm gonna check myself because they never specified, are we in New York City? Are we in upstate New York? Are we in, what am I trying to say? Where's Denzel from in real life?
Oh damn it.
I know he went to Fordham, but he's from
around the way.
Mount Vernon. Excuse me. Are we in Mount Vernon?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just didn't feel like New York to me. There were scenes where that, it looked like Cincinnati. That looked like certain parts of Toledo. You know what I mean?
It was Beverly's husband moved to Cleveland. So I didn't think they were in New York at all. I actually did think they were somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah, because the New York plates is what gave it away. And I know they filmed a lot of these scenes in New Jersey, like the church scenes in New Jersey. The ice skating scene was filmed in Maine, like Portland, Maine, because they needed it for the snow. Ironically, it didn't even snow when they went up there. They had some weird winter heat, and it melted away everything. So, it's just funny how it worked out. But yeah, like I said, maybe it's my fault because they never did specify we're in New York City. They didn't mention any boroughs. But I remember seeing those New York plates and just thinking to myself, like, what part of New York are we in?
Yeah.
So it's not really a thing that bothered me, just more so an observation. And then the last thing that I have is the robbery scene. You mean to tell me this nigga just robbed your store, shot at you, and then he just casually hanging around while the police there? He didn't try to run. Like, nobody thought, like, all right, maybe this wasn't him. I get it. Movie trope. Store owner being upset. First black kid you see that looks like a hood.
Yeah.
They like to say, oh, it's him, that's him. I get it. But it's just funny looking at him just pop up from that car and just looking casual. And everybody pointing at him and I'm like, hold on, like, I ain't got nothing to do with this. Wrong place, wrong time. Unfortunately, happens way too often.
For sure.
But just, somebody robbing a store, you would have thought they had a little bit more urgency than that to escape.
Yeah. So that's it for things that bother us. You got one more?
No. That was it.
Okay.
Any actors from The Wire? No. Even though I'm gonna tell you right now, the kid that shot at that store looked a lot like Slim Charles from The Wire. I did some real digging, and there's no confirmation that was him. But he looks like a very young version of him. So we didn't have any actors from The Wire. Rachel, the soundtrack, I think you said your piece on it, but
classic.
Incredible piece of music. Classic. I mean, it's Whitney Houston. Wouldn't let that happen to me.
I'm not, again, I think we said it several times, Henry was really pushing Dudley on Julia. So I think that I would have a little bit more self-awareness than that. I'm not going.
Yeah. The fact that he suggested that you take her out, bro, you wild.
Yeah.
You wild. That's the wildest thing I've ever heard in my life. As far as trivia goes, I think we covered most of it. There wasn't a ton of things going on. A lot of 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
When you look at, Waiting to Exhale, you got Gregory Hines, you have Whitney Houston,
Loretta
Devine. You have Courtney B. Vance a year after this movie coming out, marrying Angela Bassett. If you want to tie in another Waiting to Exhale. Jennifer Lewis going out for the role of Tina Turner. as well as Whitney Houston and What's Love Got to Do with It.
Yeah.
Jennifer Lewis playing in that film. Shout out to Jennifer Lewis for just being a true thespian because she's only 6 years older than Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
And I guess she got typecast as the mama.
The mother.
Jennifer Lewis was still very young, considerably thinking to be a grandma in
Yeah.
this film. But she can play it. She could have played. Listen, she's just a legend.
Yeah.
She can do it all. But that's really about it as far as trivia. The biggest thing was that whole Julia Roberts and then Whitney Houston having to be asked for a year straight to appear in this film.
Yeah.
I think that's about it when it comes to that. So we get to the end of the film, where we rate it.
Who's your scene stealer?
Oh, scene stealer, Jennifer Lewis. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Jennifer Lewis. Marguerite. Yeah, that's my scene stealer.
See, I think that's the easy answer. I'm going to go Gregory Hines as Joe Hamilton.
That's probably the right answer. Jennifer Lewis just has these Jennifer Lewis isms.
She's Jennifer Lewis.
Like those moments that they're just good. They're just too great. And
for sure.
A lot of times, as well as she plays a role, it feels almost like she's a little overqualified to do some of these things. Not that she's above it, but just her acting prowess is just so good that you want to see her do more on screen during times. You're right. It's probably Gregory Hines, but Jennifer Lewis is I'm just such a fan of hers.
Yeah.
She could probably win that award in every movie she's in.
For sure.
All right, so we get to the end of the episode. Too high, too low, just right. And this is where, once again, Rachel, you were right. So let me give you the rating. The average viewer rates this a 5.7 out of 10, right? Which is, I think Friday After Next was 5.8. And when I said 7 or whatever it was, I think you and school kind of balked at me. And I talked about the integrity of the ratings. And sure enough, the very next week, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, The Preacher's Wife is a better movie than Friday After Next, right?
For sure, yeah.
It's not that's not a debate. If you want to debate more entertaining, have that conversation. But better movie, I don't even think it's up for debate. But that means that since I rated Friday After Next at 6.9, I have to rate this at least a 7 or higher.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is necessarily a 7 or higher. I am going to say I'm going to give it a 7.1.
Okay.
But I could probably realistically go about 6.7, 6.8.
Okay.
Somewhere around that range.
Yeah. I'm not mad at that. I'm cool with that. I'll say this. I think this is the first year, even though I've watched, like I said, I watch Preacher's Wife every year. But aside from that, and maybe of this Christmas, this is the first year that I've gotten really, really into like corny Christmas movies. And so I think that was another part of me picking this movie because it's not just like a lifetime classic. Shout out to Kelly Rowland and Merry Little Christmas and all of those. Because I watched all of those on Hulu the other day. I am going to give The Preacher's Wife for all of it. I'm gonna give it 2 ratings.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, that's good.
Including all of my nostalgia and love for this movie, I'm gonna go 7.5.
I'm not mad at it.
For just what the movie is, 6.85.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. And that's why I was mad at myself about Friday After Next, because it's not in the same area as this film when it comes to movies. And The Preacher's Wife, I think, it's almost a little bigger than Christmas. It's bigger than a holiday movie in a sense. Very holiday-ish, like perfect to watch at this time. But but I just feel moved every time. Like the message wasn't necessarily about Christmas more than it was about slowing down and being a good person,
Right.
standing up for the right things. I enjoyed this episode a lot, Rachel. I
It's
enjoyed this conversation.
124.
Yeah, an hour 24 of just pure combo. And that's with me not even mentioning scenes. Like that's just me feeding off of you. So um, hopefully if you are watching The Preacher's Wife, you can sit down and take it for what it is,
For sure.
and appreciate the message. It's a little bit easier for Rachel and myself just having more of a background and understanding of the
Mhm.
black church culture,
For sure.
and the things that come with it, and the nostalgia. You said it perfectly, Rachel. That '90s
Mhm.
black church.
Yeah.
It was just a little different. Man. It was just different. So
Mhm.
hopefully everybody out there enjoyed it. This will be our last film of 2023.
Mhm.
So shout out to you, Rachel. Shout out to school.
I love
Um,
you.
Next week we'll have our friends and family episode air, and that'll in 2023 for us.
That's
We'll be back in 2024. We'll talk about that more once you hear our friends and family episode. Other than that, Rachel, it's always a pleasure.
always, always, always. I love you deep. And just before I wrap it up, and I know I'm sure I'll say something similar again next week, but just given the nature of this movie for all our listeners, however you've stumbled across this movie, I just want you to know that you are loved. I hope that you feel it, even if not from the people close to you. You have Culture Garden family who cares about you deeply.
Mm-hmm.
The holidays are hard. And so I hope that you have everything that it is that you need. And, just hold on, help is on the way in whatever capacity you need it. It doesn't have to be the way Kyron or myself believes, but just know that there is a higher power out there. Um, who cares? Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Can't follow that up. Well said, Rachel. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Y'all be cool. How y'all be cool.
Peace out. Bye.
Peace.